If you would like to learn how to play any chord, then stick with me to the end of this video because I am going to show you my favorite method to being able to play any chord that you ever come across. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Emma Borders. I am super excited to talk about all things chords today. Thank you for joining me. If you are someone that has never played a mandolin chord before, I am going to quickly walk you through the 3 easiest mandolin chords. And then after that, I'm going to get into a little bit more intermediate to advanced mandolin chords. So let's go ahead and start off with the very basics. The 3 easiest chords to play on the mandolin are G, C, and D. I'm going to show you the open chord version of these chords. And as you'll notice, G, C, and D are also 1, 4, and 5 in the key of G. So you can play a whole host of different tunes with these chords. They are very, very useful chords. To start off, we have our open G chord. Our open G chord starts off with open G, open D, then we've got our first finger right here on the 2nd fret on the A string, and then our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret on the E string. You want to make sure that when you're playing these chords, you are pressing right on the very tip of your finger to make sure that you have enough pressure to get the string all the way down. We don't want any buzzing. That is our open G chord, really simple. Now, what's even better is that to play the C chord, all we have to do is take this form, these 2 fingers, and move them over a string. Now we've got our open C chord. Super simple, right? So we've got G, we've got C. For our open D chord, what I'm going to do is my first finger is going to come over here on the G string, 2nd fret on the G string. Then my 2nd finger is going to come up here on the E string to the 2nd fret. That is our open D chord. So we've got G, C, and D. Super simple, super easy. And if you're just starting out, I would recommend going very slowly and practice moving from one chord form to the next to kind of get your fingers used to that motion. And like I said before, it does take a lot of pressure. So your fingers might be a little sore after starting to practice these, but don't worry because you'll build up calluses and strength in your fingers. And by end of practicing, after a couple of weeks, it'll be no problem whatsoever. Okay, so now let's move on to a little bit more advanced chord forms. There are 2 chord forms, A form and E form, or at least that's what I like to call them. The nice thing about these chord forms is that once you learn them, you can move them all the way up and down the neck so that you're able to play whatever chord you want to play. It's super, super nice because you only have to learn 2 forms. You can learn 2 forms, right? No problem. So let's go ahead and start off with A form. In A form, we have to bar. Yes, I know, barring is not very fun, but trust me, once you practice it, it'll be no problem. So we are gonna bar our lowest 2 strings. So we're gonna bar G string and D string on the 2nd fret. So what I like to do is I like to bring my thumb all the way under the mandolin so that I have more leverage to be able to press down the strings. And then I flatten my first finger. That way I'm able to cover both of those strings. Then we have our 3rd finger on the 4th fret on the A string. And then last but not least, we have our pinky on the 5th fret on the E string. This whole chord sounds like this. The reason why we call this A form is because, yes, it's an A chord, but also because our first finger is on the root of the chord. Our first finger is on A, thus it's called A form. If you have never played a bar chord before, it's probably gonna feel a little weird. It's weird, and like I said before, you might have to adjust your left hand frame to be able to play these chords. So for me, I have to bring my thumb under, and I actually shift my hand position from being here to letting my hand come off of touching the neck and out in front of the mandolin. That way I'm able to press and get the leverage that I need to be able to press these strings down all the way so that I don't have any buzzing in my chords. And that takes time and it takes practice, but the more you do it, the easier it will get. Now let's go ahead and move on to E form. With E form, we start off with our second finger on the 4th fret on the G string. Then we have to bar again, yes. So it's our first finger, and we're gonna bar the 2nd fret on the D and A strings. And then last but not least, our 3rd finger goes on the 4th fret on the E string. This chord sounds like this. Why we call this one E form is because, again, our first finger is on the root of the chord. The first note that our first finger plays, which is the 2nd fret on the D string, is an E, which is the root of this chord. Thus, that's why it's called E form. I know that barring can be very challenging in the beginning, but especially with the mandolin in bluegrass settings, we provide the backbeat. We are what's keeping the band together, and so we do that with our chop. And it's really hard. It's harder, should I say, it's harder to get a good chop when you're using open voicings. It's definitely possible, but it is much easier to get a good chop quickly when we already have 4 fingers down. So all we have to do to get a good chop is release the pressure, and that deadens the strings, and then we're able to get a nice chop. So we've got our A form and we've got our E form. And I would suggest just practicing going back and forth between these 2 chords in the beginning, getting the feel for them. Really listen to each note as you're doing this, because we don't want there to be any buzzing. You want to listen to have nice, clear notes. And sometimes the cause of buzzing is not pressing a finger down as far as it needs to go. So especially with our first fingers when we're barring, sometimes we don't get that finger all the way down, and therefore we have a buzz. So we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. Now, one thing that I do want to note with the E form is my finger is not completely parallel with the fret. With A form, my finger is pretty much parallel, but with E form, I kind of move my form back so that my hand is now touching the neck again, as if we were playing melody. And as you can see, my first finger kind of comes onto the strings at an angle. Now that you know those 2 chord forms, we get to move on to the fun part, moving them up and down the neck. So if I'm playing an A, this is my A form, right? Say I wanted to know how to play a C chord. We have our open C, which is great. However, if I wanted a higher C, a higher voicing of C, what I would do is I would move this chord form up, B flat, B, C. That's gonna be my C chord. And since this is A form, you will know it's a C chord by my first finger being on the root of the chord. So if your first finger, the note that your first finger is on, that is gonna be what chord you're playing. So say I was right here and my first finger was on the 3rd fret, then I know that that's a B flat note. That means I must be playing a B flat chord. That is how A form works. Same rules apply with E form. This is my E chord. If I want to move it up to G, all I have to do is move it up until my first finger is on a G note. So that is, what fret? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th fret. When my first finger is on the 5th fret, that's a G note, which means I'm now playing a G chord. So with those 2 chord forms, you can play any major chord that you are wanting to. Now, the nice thing is, to make it minor, all we have to do is change 1 note, right? We have to lower the 3rd. In a chord, we have 1, we have 3, and we have 5. To make a chord minor, all you have to do is lower the 3rd by a half step. So this is our A form. Once again, to make this A minor, all we have to do is lower our third finger 1 fret, like this. Now we have our A minor chord. And we can move this all the way up and down the neck. So now say I wanted to play C minor. Well, all I gotta do is move it up. If I wanted to play B minor, if I wanted to play A flat minor, just move it all the way up and down the neck. With E form, what we need to do to make that one minor is we swap our second and third fingers. So my third is gonna come up to where my second finger was, and my second finger is gonna go a fret below where my third finger was. That is E minor. And I'm sure you get the point by now. You can move that chord all the way up and down. So if I wanted to play G minor, I know exactly how to do that. So I hope that this was helpful. Like I said, these are my favorite chords, and now you can play any chord that you see in a chord chart. Super, super simple. There are other variations where we can add sevens, major sevens, diminish, augmented, all of that fun stuff. And it's really simple because if you know the theory behind it, all you have to do is add one note to the chord to make it a 7. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to hit that subscribe button and like this video, and I will see you soon.